área de direitos humanos, ele atuou no caso de Ferguson, dos Estados Unidos. Ele levou o caso, todo aquele caso de violação de direitos e racismo para Genebra, para a Comissão de Direitos Humanos em Genebra, e ele vai estar agora, depois eu deixei para passar a palavra para ele por fim, para que ele ouvisse tudo que nós tínhamos para dizer, né, para ele entender qual é o processo aqui no Brasil, vendo a vida como ela é. Então eu gostaria de passar a palavra para você, e você pode falar, você tem 10 minutos, né, democraticamente, né, e depois eu vou abrir a palavra, vou fazer um comentário, e depois eu vou abrir a palavra para vocês, informando que o teto é 15 para 5, então as pessoas que forem fazer uso da palavra, por gentileza, na medida do possível, sejam sucintas, e se for o caso também já fazer, eu já estou vendo sua mão pedindo inscrição. E aí eu já estou vendo que as pessoas vão querer falar, então eu vou abrir para algumas pessoas, tá bom? Justin, okay. Anda a bala aí, desenvolve.
Thank you, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tataji. I know this better be good, because I made you all get headphones for this.
Pessoal, eu vou deixar falar as primeiras frases e daí na sequência eu vou traduzindo aqui, tentando traduzir para vocês.
Okay. I want to start out by saying how thankful I am to be here. I'm sorry for these evil languages that divide us. However, this coalition is an opportunity to unite us in a way that is so important, I believe, that it is something that our ancestors wished for. It's a dream come true for our ancestors. One ancestor who I'm thinking about a great deal today is Malcolm X. Malcolm X told us, talk about Malcolm X for a second. In the last year before Malcolm X was assassinated, he told us that he wanted to move away from a discussion of civil rights into a discussion of human rights for black people in America. Because he said, as long as you think domestically, locally, in terms for us civil rights or constitutional rights, you are limited. You are limited to your own resources. You are limited to your own internal allies. But once you start to think in terms of human rights, once you put on a global set of eyeglasses, now you have the entire black world as strength, as an ally. And today this is a dream come true for Malcolm X. To see that this issue that affects both of us so fundamentally is an issue on which we are uniting under this coalition to gain more power and to ultimately gain victory over our enemies who are seeking to destroy our communities through the tool of the criminal injustice system. I want to make 3 quick points and then open it up for questions. In the idea of coalition politics, we have to first understand that our opponents are already in coalition. This government, the United States government, what's happening in Bolivia, the government that is entering into power in Bolivia, Colombia, in the UK with Brexit, these groups are in coalition already. They already exchange ideas in terms of how to make mass incarceration stronger. They already exchange techniques. They have a global police force, Interpol. They have agreements that they made to exchange resources in terms of how many prison beds can be constructed. Some of the same companies that constructed incarceration tools in the United States and prisons and tear gas, for example, that are used against black protesters are also used in Israel to oppress Palestinians. So it's not an option for us to be in coalition, it's a mandate. Now for us in the United States, it was very important for us to see that mass incarceration was a human rights violation of our people. It is a human rights attack. And when you talk about genocide, there are two ways to think about it. You can think about it from the perspective of politics, or you can think about it from the perspective of international human rights law, specifically under international statutes that outlaw crimes against humanity. I took the protesters, the Black Lives Matter protesters in Ferguson, to the UN to argue that what was happening to us was a crime against humanity. And we had to go through a legal analysis in order to do so. And one of the questions I want to ask you today is what would happen, as we have lawyers here in the building, we have advocates, what would happen if you did a legal analysis as to whether what is happening in Brazil is a human rights violation that should be taken before the United Nations in violation of the Rome Statute, which says that to actually enforce genocide and actually to enforce apartheid, crimes against humanity, is something that you can analyze and make a strong conclusion that all of the elements are in place to say guilty as charged. And then you can take the next step from there. Ask yourself, who is behind these policies? Who is profiting from these policies? In the United States, we have private prisons. They actually study the education level of kids that are 10 years old. And the black kids that have difficulty in school at 10 years old, they build a prison bed for them at age of 10. And they say, just wait a few years, we'll be able to put them in and we'll be able to make profit from our private prison industry. Who is making profit from the prison industry in Brazil? Who are the people who gain financially from each person that's incarcerated? Who provides the food? How much profit do they make when they sell the food inside the prison? How much are they charging for phone calls when people make phone calls inside the prison? Who is constructing the chains and the handcuffs? Who is making the prison uniforms? Who are these companies? Are these companies on your list to boycott? Are these companies that you are going to begin challenging on their practices? There are people that have power in this system, and you can start to use our power on the ground to respond to those people in a way that can be very effective. Secondly, I want to talk about this idea of abolition of prisons as opposed to trying to lessen mass incarceration bit by bit. In the United States, we are experimenting with a abolitionist politic more and more. In the Black Lives Matter movement, they use a term that I want you to remember. It's called invest, divest. And I know the Black Lives Matter people in the room can vouch for it. Invest, divest. You want to tell your state, your city, that we do not need police to make ourselves safe. We do not need prisons to make ourselves safe. We want you to invest in our safety, not by investing in prisons or building more prisons, not by hiring more police, not by hiring black police, because black police can sometimes be worse than white police, not by creating body cameras on police. We want you to take money away from police so there will be less police. We want you to invest money into after-school programs for the youth, into literacy programs for the youth, into programs that will create a safer, better society so that people do not turn to crime because they lack hope. So if you were to take a politic that is an invest-divest politic, you are looking at creating a long-term vision, a 20-year plus vision of eliminating prison from our society. But you have to ask yourself another serious question, right? If you're going to legalize marijuana, and you will say marijuana is legal. Right now, marijuana is a crime that puts people in jail. You are recognizing that the law can be a bad law. We do not depend on laws to determine how we feel about our brothers and sisters. Somebody who committed a crime of selling marijuana in the United States 20 years ago might go to jail in Colorado. Today, marijuana is legal in Colorado, meaning that same action is something that white people are getting rich off of today in Colorado. So would you look at that person who was arrested and say, you're a drug dealer. We don't want you in our community. You should be behind bars. We want justice from you. If you were to do that, you are taking your ethics from a white supremacist system that designed a law that ultimately turned out to be an ambivalent law. In other words, a law that is easily changed when white people can gain financially from the law. It was also at one point okay in the eyes of the law to have slavery. It was also in the United States and in Brazil. It was also at one point okay in the eyes of the law to have apartheid in South Africa. It was also at one point okay to have Jim Crow in the eyes of the law. So we are going to have to come up with our own way of dealing and even an idea of restorative justice for people who are incarcerated right now and welcoming them back to our communities. And here's the hard question, not just the selling of drugs and buying of drugs, but what about when they commit acts of violence as part of their engagement in the drug trade? Do we also need to rethink how we respond to people who have committed violence only because they were involved in a trade that was illegal and they had no other law to look to when somebody stole from them or when they were put in a perspective when they were in danger? How are we going to restore the people who are incarcerated back to our community? And that's the final point I want to make. The vision to end mass incarceration, the war against drugs, is a bankrupt vision if the vision does not include a very robust program for re-entry into society. How will you welcome them home? One program that we are doing right now in my university is we are going inside the prisons and providing college education for black youth who are in prison, who many times didn't even get a chance to graduate from high school. We are teaching them everything from business to reading Frantz Fanon, because we know that when they come out of jail, they're going to be in a difficult situation where nobody is going to want to hire them because of their criminal record. It's going to be very difficult for them to find employment. They have stigma to fight against. So we have to arm them mentally by providing college education for people on the inside. And not only do we don't just put teachers into the prisons, we take our students, our black students, into the prisons as well to engage with people on the inside. Why do we do that? Because we want them to know that they are their brothers, and these are their sisters, and these are people who are working to make themselves better. And we want to begin welcoming them back to society starting right now. So for me, I think that the vision has to be the long-term vision that assumes that we will win. We have to start planning with the knowledge that we are going to end this monster. Mass incarceration will end. So you have to plan like that. You have to plan for these people to come out. You have to plan to welcome them back to your families. You have to put a room in your house, set aside a room in your house for your brother who is in jail right now. And make the bed ready for them. Because we have to be in that mindset for us to be able to be prepared for their return. And eventually, when we get to abolition, we'll be glad that we were forward thinking. So I'm going to stop there. I want to open it up for questions. But again, thank you for listening to me, and thank you for putting on the headphones.
Justin, não tem coisa mais cruel, desumana e degradante como estar num lugar como esse, gente. Vocês não queiram saber como é duro estar aqui, mas a gente tem que, né, jogar o jogo. A questão é o seguinte, o Douglas veio me informar que esse espaço vai ter que ser ocupado, vai ter que ser utilizado e que não vai ser possível abrir a palavra para os debates. Não, é difícil, eu sei que é importante, mas ele veio me avisar. Eu já tinha até gente com papelzinho já para fazer a fala. Eu queria até que você, Douglas, dissesse para as pessoas o que está, né, acontecendo, né?
Boa tarde, satisfação imensa, tudo bem? Aquela coisa de sempre, os atrasos regulamentares, a gente começou muito tarde, tem duas mesas programadas para tarde, infelizmente a gente vai conseguir garantir as exposições, não só aqui, nos outros dois espaços, a mesma coisa. Vamos garantir as exposições, vamos agora trocar o tema. Tem uma segunda mesa, os convidados estão aí. E a casa, aqui a ocupação tem uma atividade hoje às 19 horas. Se a gente não entrega antes, a gente simplesmente quebra o compromisso com a casa, com uma ocupação. Eu peço desculpa.